What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Nick 4K video. Pardon my voice, I'm still getting over a sickness. Hopefully I'm good to go by next video, but we'll see. So for today's tier list, I know this isn't exactly relevant, but I finally got around to watching the Dirty Harry movies. I know the references, I know the whole like, you feel unlucky, punk, I knew all that for a long time, but I finally was able to watch the movies all from the first one to the fifth one. I only found out there was actually 5 of them about like 2 weeks ago. I had to pick them up. I watched them all, and now I'm going to rank them. So for all like 2 or 3 of you out there who are wondering my ranking for Dirty Harry, here it is. But before we begin, if you enjoy this video, make sure to like, subscribe, turn notifications for more. And of course, if you have any cool ideas for future tier lists you want to see me do, let me know in the comments. But with that said, guys, let's jump in. All right, so starting from the first one, Dirty Harry, it's going in good. I think the later films kind of were able to develop more on his psyche and the way he thinks. But when it comes to the first movie, it's just a nice, solid film. It's a good introductory film into this character and this vast Dirty Harry adventure. And I think it's just very fun. If I was going to necessarily give it a complaint, I would say that Harry's good, but the main villain doesn't really have much motivation. It's very surface level compared to some of the later characters we see, later villains. But for a first movie, it's a very solid beginning to this world and this character. So yeah, it's a fun movie, but it's not the best out of them in my opinion. Next one we have Magnum Force, and I'm actually going to put Magnum Force up in amazing. I really like this movie. I think that everything in this movie is so good except for one scene. And it's not even bad. It's just one of those things where I would have written it differently. And you'll start to notice a lot of patterns with these movies as they go on. It's pretty much like, hey, I'm Dirty Harry. I'm a bad cop, but I'm not the worst cop out there. And then they're like, hey, you're Dirty Harry. Your ways, they're the old ways. We're moving on from you. And then something happens, and like, hey, Harry, we need your help. You need to come back. And Harry's like, all right. And he reluctantly comes back, and then he saves the day. And that's kind of how all these movies work. But it's awesome. It works great. So I love it. I wish there were more. But the unfortunate pattern about these movies is that the endings are good, but not like great. I mean, Dirty Harry 4 and 5 kind of fixed it, but the first 3, especially the second one, I think the most. The second one is, while it is probably my favorite out of these movies, the ending could have been so much more better. And what I'm getting at is that the first, second, and third movie, they'll do stuff that kind of sets up something later, and then they'll forget to pay off what they set up earlier. The fourth and fifth one kind of fixed that, but when it comes to the second one especially, you notice it. The second one kind of sets up Harry against like this other like young hotshot shooter who's just as good as Harry. Like the whole movie kind of sets up the idea that Dirty Harry's going to have to go up against this younger version of himself, kind of, if Harry was a bad guy type of thing. They kind of set that up in that way. And so you're like, okay, this is going to be good. It's going to come out to a shootout, something along the lines of the good, the bad, and the ugly. They're both going to be standing there and they're both going to draw. Of course, Dirty Harry's going to win. They were setting up to this idea that that was going to be the final encounter. But at the end, what happens is Harry has the bad cop chase him in a motorcycle, and then Harry bails off of his motorcycle, and the bad cop goes flying off the edge and lands in the water and then just dies. And that's the end. And then the bad cop's gone. And of course, there are other villains in that, and there's technically a bigger villain as well, but really it was setting up the idea of Harry versus this younger dirty cop, and it doesn't really work out that way. And it's one of those things where like, it's still cool, it was still interesting, but you set up this idea of where the narrative was going to go, and then you didn't follow through on it. So that was kind of an issue with that movie in particular for me. But yeah, still a fun film. And like I said, I've only watched all these movies once, so maybe in another year I'll check them out again and my thoughts will change. But for right now, I do think that Magnum Force or Dirty Harry 2 is the best. For now, we'll see. Okay, next we come to The Enforcer. The Enforcer is an okay film. My biggest issue with The Enforcer is that, how I mentioned how these movies set stuff up and they don't pay them off later. Where with Magnum Force, it was like, okay, you didn't pay off exactly what I thought you were going to do, but you still did something pretty cool, so that's fine. The Enforcer's ending had a moment where I liked it a lot until they killed off the main girl in this. Oh, and let me mention, the whole going idea of these movies is that like Harry always has a partner with him. Whenever he gets assigned a partner, they either die or they almost die. And so that's kind of like a going theme with all these films. And so she makes it all the way to the end, and then she gets shot so quick, and she's just gone. And I'm like, you set up this character to be more than that, and you just killed her off because it was like, that's what you do in these films, that the partner dies. So as a writer myself, thinking from that perspective, I think they wanted to raise the stakes by having Harry lose his partner and then have to go like a one-on-one type of thing. The issue is that she gets shot and then Harry just takes the bad guy out right away anyways. So it wasn't even like they killed her off for no reason. It was kind of just one of those things. They did it because his partners always die. So I do think that kind of brought the film down for me, because they really did set up a cool idea that maybe she could be something in the future for a future film, and it doesn't become anything. It doesn't make the film bad. The film is still very fun, entertaining, but compared to the first Dirty Harry, it is just okay. So I'm going to put it down in the okay category. Now, like I said, in future viewings, now that I know the story more and I can kind of like just watch the film for what it is, maybe I'll change my mind, but for right now, I think it's just okay. All right, next one we come to Sudden Impact. This is Dirty Harry 4. I'm going to put this one right in front of Dirty Harry 1. I really like the story of Dirty Harry 4. It's kind of completely different in a way. Like, I would say that the 1, 2, 3, and even 5 are very similar with their plot and story. But when it comes to the fourth one, they really tried to do something different, and I really respect it. Now, the thing about it is that the first one, the second one, and the third one, Dirty Harry is the main protagonist. There are other characters, but he ultimately is the main protagonist. Where Sudden Impact, I respect it because while Harry is still the main protagonist, there is also a secondary protagonist who's also kind of the villain as well. You initially think she's just like this crazy serial killer, like the next big bad in these movies. But she ends up actually having a good reason for why she's killing. And it's to the point where even you are there with Harry, and you're like, well, Harry's not going to let this go, right? And at the end, he does. And she gets away with what she did. It was a big moment for Harry, because at this point, like, he was a bad cop taking down badder cops, right? That's what he did. Like, he was a bad cop who was still on the moral side of things, compared to a bad cop who is a bad guy who's actually, trying to do bad. While there were good cops who were doing good, he was a bad cop who did good. So that was kind of always his thing. So this was the first time in the series where we actually saw him do this, not necessarily a 180, but to do like a point where he put his badge aside. He put the law aside to let her effectively get away with what she did. It was one of those things where, did she kill these people? Yes. But the reason for why she killed them, I would say, was justified, and I think they got their comeuppance for what they did to her and her sister. And of course, it probably has the best final kill out of all these movies, with the harpoon. Harry walks out with a harpoon and just shoots this guy, and he kills it. It's great. But yeah, it's awesome movie. I also like that when they set up him with a new gun in the earlier part of the movie, he gets it at the end. It's great. So yeah, we're gonna put it at the top of good. It is not as good as Magnum Force. I think Magnum Force is peak Dirty Harry, but Sudden Impact is right behind that for sure. Next, we have the Deadpool. I think the Deadpool is... I actually think I liked it a little bit more than the first Dirty Harry, but not as good as Sudden Impact. I would kind of describe this as somewhat of a Rocky IV type of perspective, I guess you could say. And the reason why I say that is because the first three, while they have their situations going on with them, they're overall grounded, right? Then the fourth one comes out, and that one's kind of like Rocky 3, where it's still like relatively grounded, but it does have like more Hollywood aspects to it. It raises the stakes from a certain perspective, but ultimately it feels more like a movie compared to the first three. And then you have the fifth film, which is like Rocky 4, which kind of removes all of the realistic stakes from it and just makes it this really fun, action-packed Hollywood film. And that's the best way I can kind of describe the Deadpool. There are still, of course, some instances of the first three in this one for sure, but when it comes down to it, it was very flashy. There are things like, like Clint, he's a good looking guy, but he's still getting hit on by like 20-year-old chicks. Like, no, bro, that's not happening. I'm sorry. Like you're pretty good looking for your age, my guy, but you're not getting hit on by 20-year-old supermodels. But it's funny, and that's kind of part of, the humor of these films. But yeah, everything in it is good. I definitely feel like, I know Clint is old, but I think there's room for a sixth Dirty Harry. One final one. One final Dirty Harry. I want to see him come out of retirement and have to take down, I don't know, some drug lord or something. But overall, though, based off my first viewing of all these movies, this is my ranking of the films. If we're looking at these movies in a vacuum of just the Dirty Harry films, Magnum Force is the best, The Enforcer is the least best, but they're all still very fun films. But what do you guys think? Have you seen these movies? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn notifications for more. If you have any cool ideas for future tier lists, let me know in the comments. And if I use your suggestion, I'll give you a shout out in that video. But thanks again for watching. I'll catch you next one. Peace.